It's real. Real big. Real glass. Please allow me a slight revision to the end of my last speech. Eventually, unconstitutional executive war-fighting tyranny becomes an accepted tradition, just like universally trashing the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Our overwhelming history and future trend to Holocaust instruct you judges to order full, ironclad enforcements of America's original laws of military defense that allow only the people to choose killing, as we would only under domestic attack, when every other sane alternative for survival is gone. Now, every world listener, run to read your own Constitution. Finding our same guarantee of people's peace prerogative, or your urgent cause to demand an amendment to assure your divine and human family right. And internationally, together, what does "will defend but not attack" achieve? World peace. What else? Yes, exactly what lying liars sold you a world full of legions and missiles for. Whereas political, commercial, and pseudo-religious dictators need, desire, conspire to, order, and thrive on wars of profit, we, the people, when rarely we are not robbed of our rights or infected with bigotry and hate by selfish leaders, always choose peace for love and life. Article 1, Section 8 of the American Constitution enumerates powers of Congress, given to no other branch of government, as follows: to provide for the common defense and general welfare of the United States, to define and punish piracies and felonies committed, to declare war, to call forth the militia, to repel invasions, and to make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into the execution the foregoing powers. When the president says, "Butt out, every one of those powers is mine instead," Congress and the people they represent shall roll over and grovel. "Yes, Your Majesty." Oh, excuse me, our last dozen presidents only hallucinated that last sentence in capital letters. Every single tyrannical power wielded by kings of the British Empire against colonial victims the world over was overtly denied our own executives. All war-making power, other than executing the people's congressional military authorizations, was taken away from kings or presidents by our Constitution. Other writings of our founders warning us to recognize and block tyranny's inevitable return were surely intended for our most expert, most responsible, and least corruptible eyes of you federal judges. To be opened, if necessary, by vigilant citizens, refusing to let our fires of equality, justice, freedom, peace, love, and family defense and preservation die. Your honors, that simple phrase, "Congress has the power to declare war," has the obvious 1,000% meaning only mercenary liars dispute: that presidents are prohibited from usurping that power to begin or proceed with any military action without said congressional declaration or permission. Just as obvious is the single necessary exception: the commander-in-chief directing emergency defense against sudden invaders of our homeland until Congress rushed to convene and declare a war, sure enough, already declared. Judges, do you believe our people and nation ever safe without your regular decisions to interpret and enforce the Constitution? For critical American elements become apathetic or corrupted. That constitutional congressional power to declare, fully meaning authorize, approve, permit, initiate, start, make, and continue war, is accompanied by description of a full range of prospective war actions only Congress decides and acts on. Our militia funded, called forth, and directed by all the people through a majority of our many hundreds of representatives, not one single autocratic ruler. Yet thousands of congressmen and senators have sought to profit from wars they know the people would vote them out for voting for, by taking corrupt delight in punting to and crowning king and military dictator their commercial co-conspirator, the fundraiser-in-chief. And so the financiers of the apocalypse subvert and defeat the people, destroying our right and need to interpret and accomplish our public duty and military policy through the prism of our family love, purpose, and protection, our founders' entire design and command. Most of our decades in and deaths due to war in the last half-century were coerced by bald-faced lies to obtain congressional resolutions, still not declarations of war. The North Vietnamese attack upon our Navy in the Gulf of Tonkin was fabricated. Reports of Saddam Hussein's new nuclear and biological weapons programs were 100% lies. The Bush government paid the Iraqi entrepreneur Curveball over $1 million to scheme out for Colin Powell's UN con job. Lies he had since admitted his tragic error in distributing. Check your history. National populations, of their own uncorrupted prerogative, never decide to invade and conquer other nations, knowing that any such attack would also savage their own economy, security, and precious sons and daughters, also inviting counterattack by unnecessarily created enemies. Instead, it is always power-mad, money-mad, and bigotry-mad tyrants who take us to war by hook, crook, and force, whipping up jingoistic war fever to match the evils and dangers they cleverly create, fabricate, and inflate. The actual purpose of the War Powers Act's 2-month delay in Congress's duty to choose or reject our exceedingly rare but proper need to defend our national homeland, or likewise evaluate the typical, constant executive, political, commercial schemes of majestic aggression. When any Congress could convene in emergency session to declare war inside of 24 hours, is the usual corporate weaponeering conspiracy to give the almighty executive ample time to instigate and deepen his created crisis until Congress is faced with either rubber stamping another several decades of world slaughter and national security and solvency ruination, or drowning the presidential horse and American public hostage rider in midstream. Gotcha! That's how we get the business. which is, you got to admit, slicker than snot. Overturn this evil law, your honors, to begin our constitutional chain reaction back to love, survival, democracy, and true civilization. All amazingly furthered by our new, decent for a change, world citizenship. Once we disband that Tomahawk missile and Smart Bomb International police force. You can light the fuse to our love bomb to save the world. Not to mention that savage constitution you're hired and sworn to uphold. Now let's discuss those other 200 wars that our presidents, their cabinets, congresses, and overseers from Murder Incorporated weaponized since World War II. Care to deny that each was partially or fully, physically and immorally, another undeclared American war, killing new chosen enemies and innocents, and inviting counterattack against every American man, woman, and child. You can't, so we sue to define every American weapon sent abroad, FYI, more than the rest of the world's killer exports combined. As defined as an American act of war to likewise only be permitted after a public congressional declaration of war against each enemy we're handing them the guns to shoot. Much as an anti-invasion freak like me wishes every stupid, evil war declaration to expire in 100 minutes, not 100 years, you could argue that an opponent need only wait out public time limits for later victory when they outlast us. But you do recall this scenario as our real history and chronicle of defeat anyway. Filthy leaders always choosing elective, distant wars neither our nor their populations ever desire or benefit from, right? In the people power nations you and I are beginning to build, citizens, legislators, and chief executives are constantly reminded to review our own history of coercing each other to instigate or support alliances with bullies of other nations who generally also savage themselves, their own people too, into horrific menace and defeat from banging hornets' nests with big dumb sticks. Once bribery's propaganda can no longer crush your democratic opposition, your legislators may still cast your votes for every proposed new, endlessly attacking war. But remember to keep enough in the bank to buy that used car lot right after the next election. Constitutionally granted, implemented, and enforced, not just promised then stolen power of the people would permanently pound our swords into plowshares. Exactly the opposite of the war commerce tyrants pocketing our money and draining our blood or safety while battering our plowshares into swords. All international military aggression and conquest proceeds with 1. Huge commerce in arsenals, enriching company and public leaders. 2. Denying equal campaign time for peace candidates. And 3. Endlessly building the financial, political, dictatorial, and national propaganda powers of the war salesmen rulers. Your decisions to restore our Constitution will drive events thus. War profiteers will lose their money and power. The people will work with their international counterparts to defend, not attack. We change history, which was many nations with myriads of soldiers driven by venal leaders to surge into foreign lands to kill masses for power, profit, and pride. We change the future, which would have been, as soon as enough big dogs go nuclear, the world ends. But wait, as the commercials say, judges, your decisions to empower family love leaders turns us onto Robert Frost's road less traveled by. Eventually, each nation cares equally for its entire population, not just thieving oligarchs, and guards its own borders only against a sprinkling of neighbors' sentries equally powerless to mount long-range invasions. New laws and peaceful circumstances, natural outgrowths of your initial rescue of our Constitution, insurmountably block leaders' dwindling incentives to power and profit of violence, until even old addictive habits of desire and temptation die for lack of drugs. No soldier's feet, bayonets, or bullets cross one border, because loving family people in charge choose peace, as we always have wherever evil systems driving us to hell are not permitted. Your honors, 1,000,000 years of constitutional rights, love, and peace, or our last few decades of hell on earth begin in this very courtroom. In the 1700s, Western culture announced every home visit, manly challenge to a duel, and intended war with a formal declaration. The step one announcing intention to act. And he who declares does. No one could act instead of another who did not declare his own responsibility and plan. Our founders were crystal clear. Utterly unlike that evil power unto himself, King George III, American presidents were ordered and limited to executing, not initiating, Congress's declaration, and cash and militia releasing direction to then only command those troops after the people's representatives voted for a certain war upon a specific enemy, upon the entire people, not just some handy foil for one ambitious leader. Our centuries of executive usurpation of war power, timid and corrupt legislators keep failing to responsibly exercise or veto, must now be halted by clear interpretation and direction by our last judicial check and balance, you judges. Presidents periodically inform their nations that they are as incredibly prepared for this latest international emergency as all of their elaborate commercial, political, and military preparations obviously anticipated. But you people have no time to make your own constitutional decision, so I must take command today as we speak. A decent check of history reveals that they were lying every time. How many wars, excepting the rare, sudden invasion, from your entire national history revealed the faintest necessity of emergency presidential war starting before your Congress could weigh in with its proper initiative and authority? You guessed it. Zip. Zero, nada. Now, name one of all those presidential wars without the people's initial desire and pressure upon their Congress for approval that proved to either defend or benefit your nation. Other than weapons companies, other industrial magnates, and political careerists. Another goose egg. Now you know why those prescient founders insisted that because most commanders-in-chief will ever feel omnipotent, authoritative, and supreme is precisely why we must vest 100% of life and liberty-taking power in the hands of the people alone. Only Congress shall declare war. Only then directing a president strictly limited to commanding troops and spending money first directed, deployed, and appropriated by the people's representatives. But ever since, in flagrant violation of this, presidents, legislatures, political parties, and industrialists seize our money and lives for wars that give them power, pleasure, and riches. But the results overwhelm every other citizen's finances, kill thousands of us, and torture millions of us with needless, cruel tragedy. Because the founders could not foresee and right every prevention of tyranny's endless experiments and attempts, especially from corruptible, ambitious executives, legislators, and merchants, is exactly why they instructed the people and the federal judiciary to remain ever vigilant and responsive to unceasing attempts to subvert a constitution written every word to assign and protect the supreme power of the people. Well, finally, the people demand America's or your nation's life or death, powerful or powerless, day in court. America and the United Nations were lied to about active new programs for weapons of mass destruction our executives claimed were built by Saddam Hussein to give to Al-Qaeda to attack us with. After spending $6 trillion and 4,600 American lives to kill 100,000 Iraqis and to ruin and radicalize their nation, we elected a man promising to get and keep us out of stupid wars. But once he discovered that corporate billions would flow to his party and person, especially for more war, he launched us into another hopeless decade of death against a new enemy on the other side of the world. No historian and analyst, not a commercial warbacker or paid administration egghead, would dispute my factual, if pathetic and embarrassing history of obvious, illegal, disastrous war games. President Obama, like all before him, tells baseless, lawless stories to excuse the obvious flouting of the Constitution and destroy any attempt to give the people back even 1% of his war power seizure. No boots on the ground, he lies, deploying thousands of soldiers near the front lines. Dropping thousands of bombs because few airmen are lost is non-war Congress and the people have no say in. A 2002 congressional resolution authorizing a war against Al-Qaeda he cites as permission for likely decades of battle against ISIS, despite their current armed battles against Al-Qaeda in Syria. Long before and ever since Hitler's big lie strategy, perfected by propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels, Military dictators psychologically capture and brainwash their citizens into war by dominating public disclosure with long, loud repetition of lies until also subverting the power of any opposition to voice the truth, until martial cheerleading is all that's left. Planned war is war, always killing masses of innocent civilians, especially bombing wars. Our founders did not retract the people's authority to start wars and hand it to single executives in instances of this weapon used, not that one, or any congressional deference to executive initiative short of the required formal, initial, specific enemy declaration of war, said permission obviously preceding our attack. And I beg of any American with any interest in our Constitution's provision for our common defense to realize exactly what spreading tens of thousands of hunks of nuclear bomb fuel across the planet and also bombing hatred and desperation for revenge into hundreds of millions of Arab Muslim hearts is guaranteed to result in, according to not me, but thousands of history and future analysts, Western airliners and cities wiped from the face of the earth, entire nations and species likely next. Intimately acquainted with this inevitability are the financiers of the apocalypse, but they are too addicted to their money to give a damn about their children's future. When I was a drunk, didn't I wreck my own family's well-being and threaten everyone's life on the roadways? Your honors recognize that peace treaties or constitutional peace laws without provision for enforcement have and always will be spat upon. But now recognize that I just misspoke, because that provision exists. Our founders demanded that vigilant citizens and jurists must remain to take down executive, legislative, military, commercial, or any other national tyranny, either brand new or predictably typical. Our only merciful destiny they envisioned, planned, and ordered. Our appeal and your answer. Please rule that presidents may not order a single bullet or missile fired, sent, or sold without a direct order, a formal declaration from 218 congressmen and 51 senators. Penalties for violating this crystal clear people-only war or war supply authorization must be loss of military command and prosecution for killing outside of constitutionally valid military action. Likewise, your enforcement of our sworn legal duty to maximally work for world nuclear disarmament must nail down unacceptable legal consequences for executive and State Department violators of your new requirements for specific American work to negotiate with all nations possible the prompt and ongoing reversal of the nuclear arms race, including actual destruction of physical weapons and manufacturing capacity. Our cumulative progress flexible to apparently achievable international cooperation and progress. Article 1, Section 8's list of foreign, maritime, and domestic military actions only to be directed and funded by Congress, was clearly our founders' description of the range of war known to them. 0 examples were given as exceptions a president may jump on of his own volition. Throughout our arguments for a fabulous new world of legal love and peace, government counsel are gnashing their teeth to find stern, just, legal destruction of such pie-in-the-sky, revolutionary, new, extra-legal, unprecedented, utopian fantasies. Until their one little historian advisor points out that actually all actions to destroy equality, peace, and citizen supremacy since 1784 were in fact themselves radical, illegal, commercial, corrupt, and tyrannical departures from true, hallowed, written American justice. And one thing is correctly claimed by the people about our each and every wild-eyed demand. It's already the law, for which we merely ask desperately overdue, sober, conservative enforcement. Forgive me for wondering if a nation whose executive, legislative, and judicial branches, all of whom keep calling bribery free speech, so nearly finished destroying our Constitution and future, goaded on by the rest of us confused, ignorant, apathetic, thoroughly non-supreme people, deserves to die and take a suffering planet with us. Your Honors, have you ever asked why every great arsenal ever built always exploded into another great, terrible war? Because of every 100 promoters, each telling us that all those mighty weapons and millions of soldiers are primarily to enforce a grand peace, most ignore history, and the rest secretly plot attack. The chances of this world of smoldering armed heat bursting into flames from sheer happenstance, inevitable screw-ups, or millions of enraged, heavily armed men simply colliding like neutron bullets, splitting a million atoms at once. Each day's lucky delay of nuclear explosion only mounting, accumulating, ever-increasing war's odds steadily until mathematical certainty of megadeath's arrival. Hasten us through the twilight into the long last night of the damned. The spread of nuclear weapons crowns our savage 10 millennia coronation of armaments slaughter, finishes our catalyzed, locked-in program of extinction, just as confused hunters destroyed a million other worlds. Even our finest laws of love will not stay or stop this arsenal while it is retained. We must carry out our treaty, already sworn to destroy all bombs before they destroy us. Decide as you will, judges. You alone cannot rescue a world without our public love, consciousness, purpose, beauty, and work. We, the people, brought these cases, and our country is but one of all who could carry them on to our children. I am honored to speak for many people and nations stirring and working. Your decisions may now go against us, indeed, against your own families and future. But rest assured, just like Arnold, I'll be back.